Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you again for joining us for today's Black Boss Leadership Series conversation, Voices, Legacy, Leadership, and Clean Energy. I am Dresden Fran, Executive Director at Boss, and I'm pleased to be with you today. I want to also acknowledge our board chair, Ajula Otho, for her leadership and support of this work. Thank you. At Boss, we are committed to advancing ownership, leadership, and opportunity within the clean energy economy. Our monthly leadership series is designed to create space for candid conversations that bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and partners to explore what it truly takes to build and scale in this space. You will see that our leadership series, our topics, and even some of our speakers are already on the website that go all the way to April 2027. So now is your time to register for all of those for the next 9 months. We're pleased to convene these two leaders today who bring deep experience, expertise, and pace setting impact across community development, capital, market execution. So I'm looking forward to the perspectives that they have to share. Before I get started, I do want to take the opportunity to give two Boss announcements. I wanted to share updates on Boss's Empowering Health and Sustainability Program, EHS, building healthier, more resilient communities through clean energy. The goal of the program is to mobilize mission-driven investors to channel low-cost capital to BIPOC-owned solar firms, catalyzing clean energy across underserved communities. The second major goal is to drive clean energy adoption in hospitals, particularly America, the essential hospitals, while addressing the structural racism and de-investment in those areas and in those hospitals. The pillars for this work is workforce development, healthcare, renewable installations, and capital mobilization. We're trying to make this a framework that is replicable across states. So I'm excited to announce we have begun in-person pilots, conversations in New Orleans for pilot implementation, meeting with potential commission-aligned partners in healthcare, renewable energy, workforce development, and clean energy finance. We are also engaging potential secondary cohort cities to support project in Memphis, Detroit, Atlanta, Houston, and Washington, D.C. So please go on our website if you'd like to be involved in the work. We will be having it convening next year as we did this year. And we're just really super excited about that work and how we're progressing. So let's get into it. I'd like to first introduce Dana Claire Redden, celebrating over a decade in the solar industry. Dana is a passionate solar energy professional dedicated to development of distributed generation solar globally. She is the founder of Solar Stewards, a social enterprise connecting corporate social responsibility initiatives with historically excluded communities. She volunteers on multiple committees dedicated to equitable renewable energy development, including the Nature Conservancy and Clean Energy Buyers Alliance Standards Steering Committee. She is also the co-founder of BOSS and an inaugural American Council of Renewable Energy Acorn Accelerate member, and she has also served on the CF board. And our next speaker, we have Erin Smith. Erin is into working with Sustainability Way as the community engagement expansion. Her focus is to create, maintain, and foster new relationships with community members in Nicholtown and other areas that are in the Sustaining Way work. She is an interfaith minister and an active member of a robust family. She is also so excited to work with organizations that combine sustainability, community, and interfaith relationships in a genuine and meaningful way. So before we get started, Erin or Dana, is there anything else you'd like to start before we have our conversation today? All right, well, if not, we're just going to jump in and to begin. My first question is, I want to give this to Aaron and Dana. Always feel free, both of you, to follow up on any questions that are asked. With your work, if you can just tell us a little bit about your work working in this communities, and the specific question is, how are you introducing the benefits of solar energy to residents from that community development aspect? And what are the main hesitations you may encounter?
Thank you so much, Dresden, for that question and for the opportunity to be here and to support the amazing work that you all do. So, at Sustaining Way, we are a nonprofit organization that focuses on resiliency and sustainability through targeting underserved communities that face a lot of insecurities in today's world. Some of our programs look like our food distribution. So we focus on food security in communities that don't have like a grocery store within a 5 mile radius, which is surprisingly is a lot of communities. And so how we meet this insecurity, we do backyard gardens, community gardens, and we do food distribution every Thursday and every third Saturday in 2 different counties. And so, to address the food security, one of the main things that we're working on right now and how it compares with energy is we have our Healthy Home Initiative. And so that is, what does it take to have a full encompassing healthy home? So we do things like we'll go through and do a healthy home audit where we'll assess the state of the house, do things like their financial responsibility. So we'll go through and see where their power bills are high or low, if they have insulation. We also offer in our underneath our Healthy Homes program, we do motor mediation. So we were one of the few nonprofit organizations who received the Red Cross grant to be able to go and do the motor mediation for families in the communities as long as they're underserved and or if they were impacted by the natural disaster. Also, underneath our Healthy Home initiative, we go and we do solar installations into underserved communities, the residents in these underserved communities, and we specifically do that to help them lower that margin of their income rate to their living rate, right? And so, if your living costs more than what you're making, most places right now, even with the housing security, they require you make 3 times the rent. You have to have a perfect credit score, and things that are just really unrealistic. And so what our goals at Sustaining Way, especially within the next 4 years of our strategic plan, is to take what's been working, which is our food security, our energy security, and our youth security. And that's where we invest in our youth. And we have like a Steward Youth solar program. We have a Steward Youth education program. And so we bring different sustainable education practices and offer them as paid opportunities for the youth. And then in these next 4 years, our goal is to actually have a full from cradle to career process implemented in Spartanburg and in Greenville that allows the youth to have training in both solar energy work as well as agricultural work. And what we think of is how can we make something that's sustainable and resilient? And so that is where our 2 pillars come from and have came from. I think like the most challenging thing that we're facing right now is the navigation of the policy work that's in place and really just having to find different avenues of not how to engage with the residents, but it's more so how do we get these cities involved? And so one of the things that was able to take away from the BOSS training, the cohort that we had in November, was about the community benefit agreements and how, having a good structure, it takes the relationship beyond just surface level into generational relationships because we're all coming in on this project and it has the community benefit, a community in which you live and which you serve. And so the goal would be to create a space that the youth coming into will have access and accessibility and they won't be repeating the same cycles because history repeats itself, but the authors don't. And so we're here to create new narratives for people to build for the future generations to come.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And this is why I love the match of what you do to get together because both of you have a deep need to serve in these communities and do your work. You from that community development side and you, Dana, as an entrepreneur and business owner. So I want to follow up with this question for both of you is, particularly in this given time, right? What does it take to shift our mindset from vulnerability to dominance in a sector where we are traditionally underrepresented?
Wow. Well, dominance is an interesting word. And certainly, I think that we deserve to command a presence. I loved what Erin was saying about, all the ways that her enterprise meets the needs of communities. I think it's about, meeting communities where they're at. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but when it comes to serving our communities, we are the best position to do that. We know from a generational level and a very intimate understanding of what to break it down onto a household level, families need, and that really creates that value for us to really connect with our potential and current customers to enable that. I do push back on the word dominance because I don't feel like in order to be successful, we need to replicate the flawed models that we see currently dominating, right? We understand the community nature and the value that's created when we can partner and work together and not have a zero sum game approach to business and society more broadly. And so when I hear the word dominance, I feel like, we can free ourselves from thinking that we have to, replicate these existing models because they're not winning for anybody. And even if you're, doing very financially well, from a, uh, you know, uh, health issue, from a family issue, extractive capitalism just makes everybody miserable, whether they want to, own that reality or not. So as far as, our rightful place in this industry, I think it needs to continue to be valuable partnerships. I think the most valuable partnerships we can create right now are with each other. And that's what Boss is for.
Yes, exactly. Erin?
Yeah, I think that when I think of dominance, I absolutely think I have maybe mixed emotions, because I would love to see us dominate. But I think more than just dominance, I would love to see us sustain that power. I think we do come in often frequently, right? And we're like, yeah, this is our area. My ancestors did this. And then it gets diluted. And then it gets diluted again. And then it gets diluted one more time just so that it can be an even playing field. But the field has never been even. And so um, when I think about what we need, honestly, just as a society, and I'm so sorry for the background, we need to authentically show up and we need to take up the space because it's one thing to just dominate and not leave room for anyone, but it's another thing to take up space and allow people the opportunity to float with you. And I think that in this industry, especially with my current, like I'm currently in school for death doula work, and so I'm active phase in this training where we're constantly talking about life reviews and end of life planning and the questions that come up. Like there are 4 questions that you ask someone who's in the process of transitioning, and you say, "I'm going to present this statement. Thank you. I love you. I forgive you. Please forgive me." Those 4 words. Now, just imagine if you use those 4 words in a space that you know you're supposed to be in. It would be dominance, but it would also, I think it would just be so filling. And it would allow us to, I mean, come on, y'all. Take up space. Take up space. That's all I have.
Yes, no, that's great. Thank you. And I love the way that you all unpacked that question. I think that was absolutely brilliant. Um, so a follow-up question, um, around how we are strategically showing up. Um, what does operational discipline look like for um, these businesses today? The ones that you work with in the community, Dana, your own business and your own peers and cohorts. There have to be some changes in the way that you've had to operate differently. So, what does operational discipline look like for you all? And how have you had to make choices in order to ensure your business can scale in this environment and actually survive?
Well, I can, and thank you for that thoughtful question. I think we're all going through, business owners, this radical shift in technology and obviously policy. Personally at Solar Stewards, and more broadly, DCR Group, we're thinking and have had the opportunity and privilege of, always thinking about how we can innovate. So, I would always suggest, and I think most business owners really, do this innately, to be not thinking about, what's 3 feet ahead of you or even 6 months ahead of you, but, 3 years to 10 years, kind of what Aaron was talking about, that legacy planning, is critical. And I think, we do embody that as a community anyway. We just need to apply that to our businesses. So for us, we have been thinking about how we can help our community partners more with their community benefit agreements. And what a time. I mean, when we started with what was then called CBA Generator, and then, through winning a round of the American Made Solar Challenge, we had some resources to do more customer discovery on a community level. And they said, well, the generation is just, at a max 1/4 of the issue. We need to be able to track and monitor these CBAs and report on these CBAs. So that really expanded the conversation and the rename to Community Pact, which stands for Plan, Act, Commit, Track. So, we were able to move forward with this new solution in our marketplace before we, or maybe me personally, realized, these data centers coming down the pike and the need for CBAs, not just in renewable energy development, but for, community representation and the commissioning of these, huge hyperscaling, units. So, I think it's always, as an entrepreneur, how can you use what you already have to do more? How can you reach more markets, basically, with the technology and skills that you already have? And of course, I have to mention, maybe ironically, maybe conversely, AI. So I've been a little conflicted in the fact that, I like working with humans, and Claude is not a human. That being said, anyway, there's a force multiplier for business. You got to get in there. And so, I think it's a matter of really having your own personal conversation as to how you want to utilize a technology. And at a base level, that's always the conversation with technology. It could be good, it could be bad, it's how it's applied. So to make a quick summary of that, I think it's just always thinking about, well, one, we center on what do communities need and what are they telling us that they need. But then how can we take the new tools of today and apply that to those needs?
Absolutely. Erin, you want to talk about that operational discipline in your space with working in the communities? And thank you for
Absolutely.
your office partner.
Oh, yeah.
Bacon and being on.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my manager. She runs the house. So every house that she's in. But I think that I completely agree with Dana's response into how important operation is and unfortunately how overlooked it is as well. I think that specifically in the Black and Brown communities, we just do what we feel. It felt right. It went right. My best friend said this was the good thing for me, and so and I want to preface this with my background in business community and economic development. I specifically have like an M&A brokerage. So I do merge and acquisitions. And my goal is to build sellable businesses. To be a sellable business, you have to be scalable. To be scalable, you need to be duplicable. To be duplicable, you have to have operations in place. And so what made me actually transition from the business community development side into community engagement is because a lot of people do not have the capacity, right, to sit down and build out their operations. And when they think of operations, they're like, oh, I just need to know who's going to pick what up or what services or what products I'm providing. But operations is more than that. Saying I need to decide what products and services I have is essentially like saying out of the 48 discs on my back, I'm only going to focus on the 2. My spleen encompasses way more than just these 2 discs, right? And so if you want a strong vertebrae, you're going to have to find pathways and techniques that actually build something structural for you. Or a chiropractor will come in and your posture adjustment won't even get you aligned. And so in my current role, I'm a Vista, which is a volunteer and service to America. And we specifically come into nonprofit organizations to help them get operationalized. And what I also think is a big thing, and it's something that we have to digest in the future, is how do you prepare a CEO or a founder to leave a legacy when they're in their legacy actively? Like they're not thinking when I leave, because they think of when they leave as it being something sad, which we resonate when we think of death. It's like something sad is happening with this transition. But what if we lean to, I don't even know how good it's going to get, but I can just imagine because of how good it's been, right? And so operationally, your physical will reflect your internal. And so if you're physically already not having a full operational scale for yourself, if you're not aware of, this is an energy work, but if you're not aware of like your human design and how to operate in your gateways and what your superpowers are, or if you don't believe in astrology and things like that, at least know what your strengths are, like what feeds you, what drains you, because that's how you operate as a human being, and how you choose to operate will dictate how everything else in your life shows up and operates with you. Because at the end of the day, you are in control of your life. And so I think that just, getting something strategized for what works for you. My daughter and I, we love being out in the sun. If we're out in the sun, all of our problems go away. So I know that operationally that works for us. If you would have asked me that 3 years ago, I would have said, keep me in with the AC. Run the bill. Thank you.
That's really, really good. And so, and kind of following up on that, and looking at leadership, and having to pivot in different ways, as Dana, you so eloquently broke down a lot of the things that you're doing. So with this industry and that is full of uncertainty right now for Black and Brown, can you give me one strategic decision you made this year, or advice that you got from someone else, or maybe even you saw another business do that? What is one strategic thing or decision that people did, or you did, or you supported them in doing, that helped build like long-term resilience in their particular business model? And Erin, you can go first. Anyone can go first. Let me process that question.
Yes, that's a great question. And it's something that I'm actively in the middle of doing. So something that I noticed here in South Carolina is one, I'm not from South Carolina, I'm from Georgia. And so it's very much who you know, especially if you want to go far. But what has been consistently sticking out, and it's something that I've been actively working on, is diligently researching who are the experts in the area that I'm looking into, that I'm looking to build out, tracking and seeing what they're doing, what's working for them, what didn't work, where did they pivot, do they have a strategic plan, do they have a data impact report, and doing history, doing like a research check on it. And then once I've identified, okay, this is what I can learn, this is what I can offer, this is my ask, and then scheduling a meeting, like having a full follow-up process, for going after what you want. And I think that Dana really hit it on the head, when she said about having a 3-year plan, because the seed you plant today isn't going to be the fruit you get in a week, in a month. Some trees take like 10 years to grow. And so, being able to like make I have a vision board. It has a habit tracker on it. It has a full year calendar on it. I made it in a bingo card way. So if I get 5 going straight across, I get a trip. I don't know who's paying for the trip, but I know I'm gonna get one. So I only have one thing left on this bingo card to get. But it's also finding an accountability partner, right? Finding someone who supports your mission, who is aware of the work that you're doing. And they don't have to be in the industry. They just have to know that you're passionate about it and they want to see you win. Surround yourself with people who want to see you win. Because if you have a bunch of people cheering you on, rooting you on, it doesn't matter if the score was 1 point short. You still won at heart. And so I think that when I'm thinking like strategically what's working, it's finding your team of support, like Eliza said. Yeah.
I love that, Erin, and that really does inspire my answer. When I first moved to Atlanta, and this was 2009, it was the Great Recession. So even though, I moved to Atlanta from San Diego for a, W-9, I think we called it a W-2 at the time, job, um, it, the opportunities were still um, measured. But a lot of folks had a lot of extra time because of that. And so I was able to really create a whole new network of very seasoned professionals that had that extra evening to go to green drinks and, chat about when they created Captain Planet. And we're in those times right now. So, I think what Erin was saying about, community, entrepreneurship can be so isolating. Even the folks that, you've been riding with, your friends, there's just certain things they can't relate to. And that's no fault of their own. They're on a different journey. But, I think it's super important whether it's to, go together on a joint venture or just to have, as Erin said, some accountability buddies or just to have a network that relates. You don't even have to talk about it. You just kind of make eye contact and I was just at an event with, Dr. Parker with Freeman Bank, and how you doing? And it's just kind of that pause and that breath, and you're like, yeah, I know. We don't gotta launch into it. We know what's going on. But it's certainly strengthening to know we're not out here by ourselves, and these are the times that the relationships are formed that can take us to another level when the pendulum does swing around. So. But also self-care, this isn't something that I started this year per se, but I do remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when some community partners were telling me about, and I thought, oh, that's nice. But then I, got into a pretty stressful time in business, defending our intellectual property from thieves. And, my cortisol was just, and so I really had to understand, how to not internalize this work because, when you care about what you do, which everybody wants as a career, I want to do something I love to do. Well, when you love something, there's ups and downs. And, it's great when it's great, but you're going to feel it when it's not so great. So you need that support system in that community. And then, of course, that's how you do great business is just really having those fundamental relationships where, not everything goes perfect and you can have a phone call and, it can just really be direct with you about, well, we need to do this better and such and such. And I'm really excited to come to our boss convening in November and have that time with so many, like-minded colleagues and friends. So, also, and I'll end with this, having something to look forward to. Erin said the trip, I want to come. I don't know where you're going. Rewarding yourself just for the small accomplishments because all of those add up to the big accomplishments. So I think that was a really smart approach, and it sounds like I need to get my bingo card together too. The free space in the middle.
Right. Oh, that was absolutely excellent. Me too. I feel super motivated now. Um, so this is a question around, um, that we talked a lot about, pivoting for entrepreneurs and things like that. How can entrepreneurs build supply chain resilience during this time so their project timelines aren't vulnerable to global or political disruptions? And maybe there's a story that in there that you have to tell, or ways that you've had to make some different choices.
Well, it sounds like that is a question for maybe a developer when I hear supply chain. I was just telling, we have the privilege here at Solar Stewards to host Hazel M. Johnson Fellow, and grateful to that program through Black Girl Environmental. And I was telling our fellow this week, we have to plan for basically 6 scenarios. Wouldn't it be great to just, lock in with one and just run at full speed? But, that's just not realistic. And so I guess from a supply chain conversation, you got to have a deep bench for the sports metaphor. And, it's more work to have, to keep 3 or 4 of these relationships going. But, I think it's necessary. And maybe those are international. Look beyond the continents that most people automatically think of when I'm thinking about the solar supply chain. The Acor Accelerate had the opportunity to meet a husband and wife team who had the modules they made in Morocco. And with all this tariff stuff going around, I mean, what a cool partnership and opportunity. So I think, as a boss community, we can look to the continent of Africa, and I mean the entire continent, so, all the countries on it, not speaking of the continent as if it's one country. But there's a lot of opportunity that we can really tap into there. And with all this geopolitical stuff, I think we have an advantage. Also, we have, from I think of supply chain, I think of talent as well. For us as a service and software as a service business, there's a lot of talent on the continent, and we were really privileged to connect with the Youth Sustainable Development Network. A couple years ago, they had their global conference at Emory University, and so being headquarters in Atlanta, I could pop over there, and that's given us the opportunity to really engage some all-star talent And I Meekum, give him a shout out. I was watching this recording. He just graduated with his master's in international energy law. And so, these are relationships and opportunities, from a talent or, supply chain perspective that we can really embrace. You're muted, Dresden. I think you're on mute.
Dresden, you're muted.
Oh, so sorry. Well, I was just saying that you really answered two questions that I actually had in that answer. Because one was going to be when revenue or funding stalls due to market uncertainty, what alternative revenue streams keep a solar business sustainable? And you kind of answered that question a couple times in different ways of unpacking that. But I want to give Aaron an opportunity from the community perspective and the businesses that you work with. The original question was how can entrepreneurs build supply chain resilience so their project timelines aren't vulnerable to global or political disruptions, or having to make very reactionary decisions as you work with these particular groups?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I love where Dana was taking it as regards to partnerships and being able to outsource and just thinking beyond what's right in front of you. A book I recommended to all of my clients, it's called The 2-Day CEO. Regardless of what industry you're in, this book builds out like a one-page plan, and it helps you get your operations in line, which when I think of supply chain, I think that's an operation thing. And a big key in that is the partnerships. You don't have to do it all. And I know that in our communities, we think we have to. I want to put my name on it. If my name's going on it, it's going to be the best thing out here. So I have to be the one to do it. But if your name is the best thing out there, it'll speak for itself. So let the people who are experts in what they're experts in, let them shine. And I think that this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about, most founders, they don't want to let go of their baby, and so they're thinking, I have to be the one to do it. It has to be me. If it's not me, it won't be right. But if it's only you, you really aren't getting the full experience of life. And so you're missing out on opportunities to expand your product march, to expand your services. You're missing out on opportunities to have possible friends who just so happen to be bosses like you. And so when I think of supply chain, don't think that you have to be the one to do it all, because there are people who are doing something similar, or maybe you're offering 5 services and they offer 2. Take those 2 off of your hands, streamline a referral process to them, create an intake form or a case management process so that the other organizations and your organizations are getting the same data that's needed to apply for funding. You're building out strategic plans that coexist with each other, and you're building out partnerships that with the correct MOU or community benefit agreement would last for legacies. Come on.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was great. One of the things we've been talking about, and we've said this throughout the theme, is this need for partnership, right? You don't do it alone. And particularly at times of uncertainty, you have to lean into each other and onto each other. For some people, new entrepreneurs that may be on this call, or community developers, whoever's on this call, I actually would love to learn to know more about here is, what are the strategies that you look at in terms of when you see something, and you want to engage this organization? So what's your strategy to how to assess a particular partnership, and for the long term, genuinely, but also just building trust, and that's something, for a lot of young emerging leaders, it's just something you get good at over time, right? It's stretching your ability to trust yourself and your intuition when you start working with people. So do you have anything to say about that? For a lot of people that sometimes doesn't come easy or natural for people. So I'd just love to hear what you all have to say about that.
Well, I can speak to that, and that kind of goes back to the founding of Boss. When you have a new partnership, it takes time to really know what you know the obviously the partnership's going to look like, but who's on the other side of that partnership. It's kind of like dating. Get a representative for 90 days or more. you know you just want to know who is this partner at a real, when things are great and when things aren't so great. So in that time period there's a lot of risk, and sometimes that's too much risk for a small business. So part of the value of a network like Boss is you can call up your fellow Boss member and say, hey, have you worked with them? How did that go? Oh, they're great. Or, hey, watch out for this. And so, that's what wisdom is. It's not necessarily figuring everything out by yourself, but leveraging the information that you have, from other generations, your community. And so I would certainly lean on, your peers, colleagues, and friends. Don't be afraid to say, hey, and also I think we live in this climate of, maybe being, you don't want to seem like a hater, or you don't want to upset anybody by, calling out bad actors. But your silence is, being complicit in the system. You have to be able to say, hey, that wasn't right. And, I'm going to talk about it. Maybe I won't blast it on LinkedIn. Maybe I will. But, at the end of the day, if my contract doesn't have a clause that, so check that first, I will say. We've got to have an accountability, and, it should be in the way that people conduct business, but it should also, business reputation. That is so fundamental and so old school. And some of these, bad actors that want to take advantage of our businesses have forgotten about that. And, I'm going to call out Target. Hey, don't be Target out here. So, and sticking together, and at least knowing what you're getting into, I think that really gives you more chance of success with those new partnerships.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Erin, I'd like you to address that question as well. And then we also have a question from one of our attendees today that I'll ask after.
Perfect. Yeah, I think Dana hit it on the head. Wisdom and discernment. I will say neurodivergent ADHD OCD person here. So my example will be to how I came across the Boss Network. My organization was already enrolled in it, and had been attending the cohort. They were giving me updates, but actually during that time frame, I think the cohort started in September, and my sister passed in October. So I was actually out of office, and then the Boss event was in Atlanta. Me out of office is back home in Atlanta with my family. And Preston, who is in the solar energy specifically, and Michael, who's in policy, they're like, listen, you should come to the event. Just come and hear it out. You need to get out the house, basically, is really what they were saying. And I went, right? And this was the first time that I went, and I didn't research. I didn't have an ask an offer. I just showed up. And I showed up trusting the people who brought me into this space, knowing that I would fit in. And so after the session, I went home and then I did my research. I said, okay, what was I just at? Who was there? The feedback I was getting was so inspirational. They're like, oh yeah, you know what you're talking about. And I'm like, I do not know how to install a single energy anything, which made me in my mind feel incompetent. But it also allowed a level of vulnerability for me to be honest with myself. Like, what do I need to feel confident Is it, do I need the solar training? Yes. Did I sign up for the Black sustainability training? I did, because I'm going to show up as authentic as possible, but definitely well informed. But it also allowed me the space to lean into not having it all figured out. I got enough figured out to know that my ancestors don't play about me and God don't play about me. So it's on you to figure out who you want to play with, because yeah. So that would be my advice, that discernment. And normally when I do my research, I color code everything. So I'll pick the person, or I'll start with the organization. I'll find someone who's in the field that I'm in. I go and check their LinkedIn. I go check their Facebook, their Instagram. They're thankful we don't have MySpace, because you learn a lot about someone from their MySpace songs. But then you do that research, right? And then you go and you look on the website and you check their website, you read their bios, you see the organizations from their history that they worked with, and you say, oh, I like this initiative that they worked on. I could talk to them about this, or this initiative that they did 10 years ago is in alignment with what I'm trying to bring back now. And so by the time you get to that meeting with that person or that organization, you could go and talk to the CEO, or you could go and talk to the place-based manager, who's going to be the person to actually pair you with the CEO after they've vouched for you, because they've made a genuine connection and they met you where you are. You have to be able to meet people where they are without diminishing where you're at. And so sometimes that looks like, okay, look, I know this person this is a high level conversation. I'm 50,000 feet in the air and they're comfortable at 15,000 feet. But are you comfortable strapping them on your back and taking them up 50,000 feet so that they can at least see? They don't have to jump. They need to be able to see that high level view, so that when they're taking the steps to meet you there, they're not missing a step. We don't want to be like that meme of the lady carrying all that stuff from 2025 to 2026. That's not going to be us, y'all. That's not going to be us. So
Absolutely. I love it. I have one question I'm going to ask before we close, that's going to address allyship, as I want to talk about that allyship, what it was 5 years ago and how we are today. But anyway, a question from the audience is, and Veronica, do you want to read that for me, please?
Sure. How are developers looking at the outlook for this year and OBBA? And what are pipelines looking like? And does anyone need help with finance or pipeline orchestration?
I hear a little plug in there. Sounds like a little follow up in the chat for somebody.
Well, it's a good question, but what we can do is
Dresden, I think you're fading out a little bit, but I can say, from my perspective, we have kind of a good hangover in the safe harbor. I don't know what it's going to look like when, truly the market has to reflect all of the incentives that are no longer a part of the equation. And so the other side of that is nobody's power bill is going down. And these corporates that want energy are buying energy. And they're buying renewable energy, even though we've been, singled out and targeted, and pushed back in interconnection queues and such. Of course, I'm going to say that distributed generation is our ticket. It is the opportunity that we can control the most. And all of you know that with solar, it's like the hardest part of 4 industries: real estate, energy, technology, and land uses. I think I might even be missing one. We have a hard and policy. We're so dependent on good policy, but nobody's stopping you from putting some solar on that community center, other than persuasion of local governments and So behind the meter, I see a lot of opportunity for behind the meter because that's where those numbers, because of the increases in everyday expenses and energy bills, continue to really show up in individual lives. And the issue there is that uh, you know host, whether it's a school, whether it's affordable housing, they need to be able to access financing. So sounds like the person who submitted the question might have some solutions around that as well.
I
Dresden,
would
we
like,
still can't hear you.
Can
but
you
I
hear me?
would like,
Sorry.
yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, I would like to add with that. First, I want to say that what I'm about to say is that 50,000 feet, the meme with the guy trying to explain to his friends why they should get all this land. So there are a few things that I think, one is how do we put the power back into the community? Because where the power is, the money lies, right? And so there are things like a community steward trust. Some examples that I highly recommend looking at, it's called The Guild in Atlanta, Georgia. And it is an apartment complex that's owned and operated by the renters. So they rent there and they own the property, right? They're putting their money back into it. They were able to get enough investments to buy a grocery store and a food desert. So now they have the only food desert, the only grocery store in the food desert owned by the people that live there as well, right? And so I think of things like that, or the American Declaration Act of 1762, which frees us as Indigenous peoples and allows us to create our own, country. Once again, 50,000 feet. I'm so sorry that I got us all up here. But don't worry, I'll bring you all back down, safe and sound. But it's in, and even with that American Declaration, right? We have the opportunity to create our own currency. So these data chains and these data centers, right? That was originally blockchain, which was cryptocurrency, which is a form of money, right? Stay with me. I'm sorry it's here, but I promise I'm gonna bring us here, y'all. I got us. And so when I think of the funding, even land, there's a farmland trust, right? You can get 3 to 125 nonprofit organizations to come in and say, this is our land trust. Now you all have ownership in this land trust. It's a 99-year lease that you have the opportunity to do whatever you want on this land trust. We've been able to nurture a partnership here with Duke Energy, which is allowing us to install the solar panels on homes, but we give the residents the opportunity to cut that power bill, right? So you put the solar panel on your home, you feed energy to the community, and you feed it to yourself, and whatever's left over, you give it back to Duke. You don't owe, your residents don't owe, your neighbors don't owe, and as much as Duke probably will like more money on it, they're getting what they are able to get because we now have that community agreement. And so I think diversifying, you're supposed to have 7 streams of income if the goal is to come from, rich dad, poor dad. We need to have 7 streams of income. And that goes back to that operations, to our supply chain. You have one business that does operation, one business that does supply chain, one business that does the energy, one business that does this. And then you bring them all together. That way your money's not all tied up into one thing. You have different avenues that you can funnel and bring money into. So, and I'm even thinking under supply chain, break those supply chains down. And now you have a specific, I think there's something called like an air filler or something along those lines, right? And we outsource that. But what if we make a partnership with the business that we outsource it with, where we're getting a back pay for every referral? $3 is minute, but it adds up if you say you get 300 people to do that a month, or if the amount of equipment that they're buying equates over to that. So it's being able to take 1 + 1 and getting 2 without 1 + 1, making 1 + 1 = 1 squared, or something along those lines, because there's just so many avenues. And with the climate of our current governmental system, it's not reliable right now. My role at work is not dependable because vistas were taken away. That was part of the program that was shut down. We love what we do so much. Our vistas still worked for free. And so you have to, but we were able to create additional sources of income. So you have to be able to, I think, lean into your creativity. Money's green is the heart chakra, but it's also the color of our insides before they come outside. So, just follow what's going.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Everyone can hear me right now? And get a thumbs up. Okay, good. I'm sorry for that technical difficulty if that happens again. We have only 4 minutes left, but I just want to acknowledge this because I want us to start talking about this more in the community, is allyship, right? Something that was born 5 years ago, the new reckoning of our experience as brown and black people and minorities. I was on a conversation with someone earlier today that said, yeah, allyship was really big deal because of what happened after George Floyd, right? And said that. And they wanted to fund. And in this moment, in the last 2 years, we have seen what true allyship is and what true allyship is not. So I'd like to get a sense from you all is how do we begin to control this narrative moving forward, and how are we going to redefine some of this areas of these partnerships that we may not want to even work with in the future or may want to keep a relationship with.
Well, I can jump in here quickly and say, I'm still working through this because, I have been profoundly, and disappointed is the nicest way I can say it. I want to say disgusted because I just have an aversion to just the lack of integrity and the, unveiling that, oh, that was all just a profiteer motive, So, when the pendulum comes back around, because it will, how will I handle that? From a faith standpoint, you gotta just kind of, you're never gonna forget, but you don't want to necessarily hold a grudge. But I like how you put it, Dresden. Controlling our own narrative. I think why we always got to take this higher road, and good for us. I think it's just another educational opportunity. Someone described racism as kind of an addiction, and I think it's kind of, I think that's a really good way to speak about it. And addicts, it's a disease, it's a chemical imbalance, but also there's a lot of the road to recovery. It's kind of perpetual. So I think when if I can think about it in that context, perhaps I can have a little bit more grace to say, oh, they relapsed again.
Right.
Get them back into rehab. So,
Right.
I guess we can think about it as a rehab situation. And also from a protecting our own psyche, because that's first. Um, knowing, the limitations that, they may have if they do indeed have this addiction, right? So, yeah, I guess I'd think about it in that context. And I know we're out of time. I want to put a survey in the chat. I would invite everybody we're really getting some really great feedback from folks who are working on CBAs or want to work on CBAs. Thanks for allowing me to plug that and always to be a part of this amazing network.
Awesome. Thank you. And we will send that up in the post event follow-up. We'll include that survey for you if you'd like. Erin, just with like 30 seconds, do you have anything else that you just wanted to add there in your piece before we close today?
I think Dana hit it on the head. I would follow up and just say, Jesus didn't go into rooms deciding if he wanted to be Jesus or not. He showed up as Jesus, no matter how many times his cheek got slapped, And so I think that when I think of allyship, I definitely as well have had some organizations that have rubbed me the wrong way. But I look at those opportunities and I think back to when I pass, what do I want people to say at my service? And I want them to be able to say, no matter how dark the sky got, she made it shine. And so I think about that with allyship is just being myself and making it shine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you both, Erin Smith and Dana Claire Redden, for being on this amazing panel and these questions. We will have a post follow-up as well as post this on our website. So again, thank you for being a part of the Boss community. Make sure you sign up for the What to Know Next that's coming up, because we've got a lot coming up. And I just appreciate your time, and I'll see you at the next program that we have, which is Thursday, June 18th from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. It's called Power and Providence, Structuring Black Ownership into Clean Energy Transition. So you'll see that a lot of our social media, but we hope to see you back there then, okay? Thank you so much, panelists, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dresden. Thank you, boss. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. Thank
Have a
y'all,
good day.
ladies. Y'all have a good one.